as NBA fans, I think sometimes we all, right, don't really pay really close attention to the kind of the business side of things with NBA basketball. And something that's coming up is the new CBA and them working on it. And it seems like one of the biggest issues or sticking points right now that they can't agree on is the hard cap, right? The NBA wants technically what is going to be, they're calling it an upper spending limit, but for all intents and purposes, it's a hard cap. And that paired with the new TV deal that's coming, I want to talk about how that could affect the future of the NBA. What's going on? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central. I'm one of the hosts here, Haize. On today's episode, we'll be breaking down those two topics: the upcoming new CBA, what a potential lockout could look like, and what a hard cap on top of a new TV deal and how that could affect the parity around the NBA. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
The number one place for your daily basketball fix, NBA Central. Hosted by the one and only CEO Haize.
All right, basketball fans. So if you guys pay attention, I'm a basketball nerd. Right? I'm a sports nerd in general, so it's not just basketball. I've read the current CBA for what I do here, what I do over on Locked On Bulls, what I do over at Chicago Bulls Central. To add to my knowledge and talking about trades and things, I read the CBA almost not too long after I decided to start becoming a content creator for the Chicago Bulls. And so in that, it did add to my knowledge. But one of the things that, with the way that the contract works and the luxury tax and the fact that there's a difference between being over the cap and into the luxury tax, I just think that not every NBA fan is as engrossed in that, and they shouldn't have to be, right? It's not anything to wrong anyone or anything for. But as we're hearing, if you guys are NBA nerds like me and just kind of paying attention to this thing that currently the Players Association and the NBA extended the deadline. There was a previously December 15th deadline to come up with and agree to a new CBA. They decided to extend that because they couldn't come up to an agreement on it. And one of the biggest sticking points, it seems like, is that the owners at this point want what's technically a hard cap. Now, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of like contracts and everything and how that could work on it. Like a little bit, we'll talk about that a little bit just from the nature of the conversation as a whole. But with that being said, it's just this, right? The way that I look at it is that we're seeing one of the best seasons that we've seen in the NBA as far as basketball. You can turn on a basketball game and get a good game any single night. We're also seeing some of the closest parity that we've seen in records. For example, in the Eastern Conference right now, between the 3rd seed and the 12th seed, it's only 6 games, right? And it's even less than that the farther you go down. When you look at the number 2 seed to the 10th seed that would be a play-in tournament, there's a 6.5 game difference. And while that doesn't seem like a super small number, considering the amount of games that the NBA plays, there's just tons of parity right now in the NBA. There was a lot of teams that made moves that have worked out, some that haven't worked out so far in the NBA season. And when you look at the potential of what a hard cap could bring to the NBA, it kind of evens the spending, right? You have teams like my team, I'm a Chicago Bulls fan, Chicago Bulls that don't spend into the luxury tax, but they do go over the salary cap. And the addition of what a hard cap could look like for the NBA, for example, right? It would force teams to make harder decisions on the contracts that they offer their own free agents. You got to look at it, for example, like a player like, let's lose Klay Thompson, for example, in this, right? Or, let's look at a player like Miles Turner with the Indiana Pacers, who's set to be a free agent, could sign a really huge deal, having one of the best seasons of his career. If there was a hard cap, the Indiana Pacers really have to look at it as, hey, how far are we away, right? We know we have Tyrese Halliburton who's shown some. We have Benedict Mathurin who looks like a stud. Do we want to spend big time money and hard cap and in a hard cap type situation to keep Miles Turner? And we're still kind of far away. It's where we can kind of let Miles Turner go, or at this point, if they do decide, again, this is theoretical too, if there was a hard cap currently, do they then look to move him at the deadline if there was a current hard cap to just kind of avoid it, maybe get some expiring contracts in, maybe some younger players that are going to be more favorable contracts you can build? I think that it's the way what we could see if a hard cap is eventually approved, and it is part of the CBA where it does not allow for a luxury tax anymore. Every team is hard capped. You can see it for an NBA that currently has, try to build in a lot of things for teams to keep their own free agents if the free agents do develop. You may have to look at the what that could do for a team to not go into the luxury tax. Now, if they do make a hard cap, I do think that what is currently the luxury tax bill, this is just my own speculation. What the luxury tax is right now is probably going to be the hard cap limit. It's just not going to have those double fines and things if you go into the luxury tax. That also is going to stop revenue for the younger teams because for the smaller teams, because for those that don't know, all the luxury tax money gets spread out amongst the teams that were not into the luxury tax. I think there's some other places it goes as well, but like it just could really change the dynamic. And when we're at a time of parity, and also when we're at a time that there's rumors of NBA expansion in the next handful of years of adding 2 more teams to the NBA, when you look at what that does for parity, what that does for, it makes it even more important for you to draft your players, for you to really do some research on who you're going to bring into your team, whether it be through the draft, whether it be through free agents, because at that point, you don't have the ability to go over that, right? You don't have the ability to go over that hard cap. So I still think there's going to be a spending kind of bottom, right, where you have to spend over a certain amount, but then there's going to be that hard cap if this is improved. Now, another wrinkle of this that you look into it is that with the new TV contract that's coming, I think it's the 2024-25 season. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. But with that also coming in, that brings a huge influx of money. So the cap is already going to increase substantially for that. So it may be a while until we're really feel the impact of what a hard cap means for the NBA, because we have the new CBA. It's going to increase some things. You then have a new TV deal that's every time there's a new TV deal, it increases the salary cap by a large margin. So we could look at maybe probably 7-8 years before we really see widespread throughout the league what a hard cap could really do to this NBA. But it just for a fan that is enjoying the parity, enjoying what we're seeing in the NBA right now, like you have teams that are barely above 500 that are surefire playoff teams. So what that does to that, it can make the league so much more interesting. It also, you're going to then see the front offices that have a plan for how they spend that money. The front offices that do spend smartly right now. I used my team, the Chicago Bulls, for example, a team that already does not go into the luxury tax, a team that has to be really smart in the way they use their money. Now, sometimes that does force them, let me not say sometimes, that has forced them to miss out on some big name free agents that they could have possibly go after at certain times in the franchise's history. But a team that already has to be smart in the way they spend their money, we could see those teams thrive in a hard cap type situation. And the teams like the Golden State Warriors that have drafted well, right? That's been one of the benefits of them. They've drafted well and they pay their players. But you could see a team like that is not afraid to spend into the luxury tax, be forced to make some tough decisions on players that they otherwise would have just went into the luxury tax to re-sign. It can bring about so much more parity and I think so much more fun overall in the NBA as well, if that's the way that it ends up going. Not to say that I'm necessarily calling for a hard cap. They pay people who's supposed to be a lot smarter than me to make those decisions. But again, I talked about the Eastern Conference, right? The parity, just to highlight that, between the number 2 seed in the Western Conference and the number 10 seed is only a 4-game difference as far as win percentage. 4 games. Determines that. So the parity in the NBA has been great. And I do think a hard cap type situation can bring about more parity because then it's all even. You're still going to have your teams that don't spend a certain amount of money because they just don't make as much money if you're a smaller market team. But there are going to be more people fighting over less money, right, to a degree. And it really depends on what the NBA ends up setting that hard cap on, if it is extended. But you just got to look at that and say, hey, this could be something that, as much as we're talking about players being overpaid now and things like that, is this a way, a fight back to the player? Not necessarily purposeful, but what does this do to the player empowerment movement, right? What does this do for the super team era? We've labeled this. This is kind of the super team era in basketball right now. So if you take away the luxury tax, it's really going to drastically change how a lot of these franchises build their teams. And yeah, I know this is kind of a different video than what I usually bring here. I usually talk about players or teams and things like that, and we'll get back to that. But this is just something that's been on my mind since that news came out over the weekend, and just really thinking of how could a hard cap improve the game of basketball, and then how long would the effects of that really be felt, considering, like I said, hard cap, the new CBA is coming soon. Then we got new TV deal coming a year after that, which could be not a year or two after that could really play big parts into, keeping that salary cap high for a while. But it's going to be interesting times if a hard cap is indeed improved. how that changes the destiny for some franchises, how that changes the plan for some franchises, how that changes the thing. Like, you at that point have to be even more selective over who you give super max contracts to. We've seen so many super max contracts given out since that became a thing. If you look at a hard cap and each dollar that you spend being that much more important, what does that then do to the super max? It's going to be really fun to see, as somebody who just loves the sport of basketball and loves sports in general, to see what that big of a change to the NBA system does to teams and does to parity and does to just players as well. Everybody in every aspect of the game could be affected by this. But let me know what you guys think about that down below. Make sure you are following me at CEO Haize. Make sure you also subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, as we keep dropping, me and the Kanye boys keep dropping fire content here. But that's it for me for today. Yeah, that's it. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.